Hey, what's up, guys? It's Austin of The Lone Few. Today, I want to talk about some more World War II. I know, shocker, we haven't done this in forever. It totally hasn't only been a week or anything. Today, I want to talk about maps, because I've talked about war mode. I've talked about, some ideas for headquarters and for game modes that I think would breathe some life into this game. And of course, this game has a lot of issues with it. But I feel like a lot of the issues, some of which I've outlined previously, are minimal at worst and are fixable at best. Nothing that I've said thus far, I think, ruins the game in any way. I don't think any of it ruins the longevity of the game. It's still going strong for me. But maps are an entirely different monster. Now, this shouldn't be news to people that, I'm not a fan of these maps. I think a lot of people aren't a fan of these maps. This is the first Call of Duty in a while, excluding Infinite Warfare, because I really didn't play Infinite Warfare. This is the first Call of Duty game in a while that I look at the maps, and I couldn't tell you which one is my favorite. I can tell you which one is my least favorite, and that's U.S.S. Texas. It is it is a garbage map. It is the worst map I think I've ever played in a Call of Duty game, ever. And the fact that I have a most hated map and not even a, this map is pretty good map should really say something. No maps even stick out, if I'm being honest. Even when Black Ops 1 was in its heyday, you knew, hey, firing range, that's a good map. That's one of the standouts, right? MW2, oh, there's Terminal. Terminal is a standout, Black Ops 2. You have Raid, you have Standoff, you have all these maps that even at the time felt like they were going to become classics, I guess. But in this game, what is, Gibraltar, maybe? If I had to pick a single map from this game to be remade in Call of Duty 2021, Carentan again? What would you even pick, And I've been trying to figure out what the reason for it is. And I don't exactly have a concrete answer, but I have a couple of hunches. So mainly it comes down to spawns and the actual layout of the maps and how they flow. So the majority of these maps, not every map, but the majority of these maps are very narrow and they're very two-sided. So I'm going to use U.S.S. Texas as an example. It's an extreme example. Like I said, it's the worst map I've ever played, so I guess I'm biased in that regard. But this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. So on U.S.S. Texas, let's call the map 100, feet wide. Let's just say that it is, for ease of math, 100 feet wide. 33 feet on either side is spawn. So you have a third of the map is one team's spawn on either side, and you fight in the middle. That is how the map plays. I don't know if it was designed this way, but this is how the map plays. And I'm not even, gonna get into the window bit that overlooks each of these spawns. I'm just going to talk about where the spawns actually are. Now, because of how the spawn system works, especially on this narrow of a map, this tight of a map, you will only ever spawn on one side or the other, including game modes like Team Deathmatch and Kill Confirmed, where there are no objectives that you need to spawn near. And no matter what, you will not spawn in the middle of the map. You will spawn on either your end or the other end if you somehow are able to flip the spawns on U.S.S. Texas. Because part of the problem is also how sticky these spawns are, even in non-objective game modes, where you can have someone running around your own spawn, and because there's so many nooks and crannies inside of this very, very confined, very narrow spawn area, you can still spawn outside of that person's view, and the game doesn't think anything of it because the rest of that team are hanging out over in their spawn and waiting for you to show up. So essentially the game can only spawn you in two places, either in the enemy spawn where there's, 4 or 5 guys, or in your own spawn where there is one guy running around. Clearly, the one guy running around is the better option, but when compared to spawning literally anywhere else other than those two locations, is shit. And nearly every single map follows this same exact philosophy of you either spawn on one side or the other. There is no middle ground. Flak Tower is another example of this, where one side or the other. It creates this constantly linear gameplay, which is bizarre because there's so many flanking routes, especially on Flak Tower or Point to Hawk, to where in actual objective modes, when you hop on B-Dom, you have to face back at your home flag because it's just more common that people will try to flank around you. And so instead of actually using this, decent sized map, you end up with 33% and 33% on both ends, some more, some less, that are utterly useless, that you just spawn there. And then you have another third in the middle where it's just a clusterfuck. And that even if you get through the clusterfuck and into the enemy spawn, that doesn't guarantee a spawn flip. They will just continue to spawn there on top of you until you get your entire team back there to tip the scale. And these maps shouldn't be built like scales. Even going back to Black Ops 2, I mentioned Standoff. Standoff is a very two-sided map in a lot of ways. But because the flanking routes are wide enough in their own right that you can spawn in them, the only time you will actually be at the spawn in a team deathmatch is the initial spawn. After that, it's anyone's game. It's a square map, not one of these rectangles, or in some cases it feels like a straight goddamn line. I'm going to go down the list of maps that do this, okay? Aachen definitely does this. It's on a much bigger scale than U.S.S. Texas, but it still does this, where you have 2/3 of it on the outer sides that do not get used whatsoever. They just serve as a spawning ground and then a clusterfuck in the middle. Ardennes Forest is probably one of the better ones in that instead of breaking up into thirds, maybe, you take a quarter off of each end and you have half in the middle, maybe. And Ardennes, it feels like you do actually spawn kind of in the middle sometimes, depending on where people are. So Ardennes, I'm going to give a pass. I think that is a good map. It's a passable map. Flak Tower, I already said, it's one of the worst on this. Gibraltar, also one of the worst on this, especially then when you factor in that one side has a significant advantage because of the hill. Gustav Cannon does not follow this rule, but the problem with Gustav Cannon is it's too goddamn big for everyone. Now, a simple fix for this would be to put ground war in this game, because while it's too big for 6v6, it's definitely not too big for 8v8 or 9v9. London Docks, exact same thing. You will not spawn in the middle of the map. Now, Point to Hawk kind of bends the rules a little bit, because if you look at it, it's a big circle. And while there are spawn points at the beginning, they don't necessarily stick. There, definitely is a sense of you spawn close to your side, but at no point do I ever feel like I'm stuck spawning in the exact same spot. The problem I have with Point to Hawk is, remember how I said the center of those other maps, like Aachen and U.S.S. Texas, was just a clusterfuck? That's the entirety of this map. It's just one big ant farm. And that might be what they're going for. And you know what? If that were the only map in this game that was a clusterfuck, I would think it's, a novelty map. It's one of a kind. That's the point of the map. But because it's in here with all of these other maps that are so shittily designed, it just feels like another shittily designed map. Saint Marie de Mont is probably the closest that we have in this game to a traditional, 3-lane map that, I was kind of talking about earlier. If I'm being honest, I think that's probably the best map that we have as far as spawns and about not spawning specifically only in these two diametrically opposed points. And then U.S.S. Texas, which I already, went through, is the root of all evil and, should be sank. So, excluding Caratan, because of course it's a remade map, I count Ardennes, Gustav Cannon, and Saint Marie as the 3 maps that don't make me want to rip my fucking hair out. Now, of Ardennes, Gustav, and Saint Marie, do any of those 3 stick out in your mind as, oh man, they're gonna remake this map? They don't. And to be honest, that's where, my theory ends. I don't know why they don't stick out like, any of the other ones. Even Advanced Warfare, I'm thinking back right now, like Riot, Detroit, great fucking maps. If they were to remake any maps from Advanced Warfare into this one, it would be those 2. So it's not like Sledgehammer is incapable of making memorable maps. It's just for whatever reason in this game, they all blend together. Maybe it's because of the level design. Maybe it's because of the limited setting. I don't know. But there's just something about them that just, nothing sticks out in this game. There is no universally loved map, and that is what worries me. Because if speculations are true that there's only going to be 3 multiplayer maps with every, DLC pack, and one of them already is going to be a remake, that's only 8 more original maps for this game. And while, yes, that is almost double of what launched, I'm not so sure that they've learned their lesson of what makes these maps not work, because I don't think we even know why these maps don't work. I don't know. I love this game so much, and I want to continue playing it. But this is just another one of those things that grinds my gears, and it's just something about it, and I can't put it to words. Something about these maps just don't feel like Call of Duty maps. They feel cookie cutter. I don't know. Do you guys know? What are you guys' thoughts on the maps in Call of Duty World War II? I almost forgot the name for a second there. Because, that's my theory as to why these maps don't quite work. Of course, this isn't backed up by any kind of, statistics. I haven't done a study on this stuff, but, this is from, 3 Prestiges worth of the game and what I've come to come to learn and come to expect. This is kind of what I'm thinking. Let me know what you guys think down below. If I'm absolutely crazy in this weird, theory that everything's fucking diametrically opposed. It could be something I'm completely missing. Leave it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed, leave a like, all that jazz. We have a Discord server. Join that. You'll know when we're streaming next. Then we'll be chatting in there. And I will see you guys when I see you guys. So see you guys. Peace.